Boy, look at these wonderful honey-baked ham samples.
What we call this meeting,
This is the work meeting, work session. Open, yeah.
an open meeting, right?
It is an open meeting. It is a public meeting, but it is not a public hearing. So while it's open to the public and it's actually being recorded and on YouTube. So be aware, people will watch you eat and
Yeah.
we'll get comments and criticism of, I can't believe you used the wrong fork for this meal.
Take your finger out of your nose half the time.
Yeah, those types of things. So so it's for the public, but it's not a public hearing where the public would come in and comment unless the planning commission felt that was important.
Right.
So occasionally, we've had people come and sit around the periphery of the room. People that I'm not acquainted with, I guess, like students that are coming to fulfill a class assignment. So if those people come in, they're really not allowed to speak unless they're invited to do so. Is that correct?
Correct. And this room, I think, will be a little better for all of us. We'll be able to hear things better and it'll capture it on YouTube more completely so people can hear what's going on. And hopefully all of these types of issues that we've had with technology over the last while will be resolved when we move into the.
That's what I said.
So I say we create a pool to see how many audio, video issues we have in the new building.
Right. How many weeks it takes to become efficient in a new space, right? Or how many days or how many hours?
Yeah, there'll be growing pains.
Yes.
Anytime we get a new system, we'll come in. I guarantee you I'll one day come in and crash the whole thing during a meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
When is that scheduled for completion of the building?
In the spring, I think they said what, March, we start moving some things in. Is that right? Oh, February. Yeah, that. So February, that's why I said March.
It is construction.
Yes, we all know how those things go.
So this is the first time I'm in charge, so I expect you to keep me in line and help me out here a little bit.
I don't think there's any way I could keep you in line.
Help me stay straight then.
Oh, okay.
That's probably true. My mouth runs faster than my mind, so. So I need to call this to order then, the
Yes.
work session. So I'll call the work session for the Orem City Planning Commission on October 16th, 2024. We have an agenda for the meeting, or one thing I wanted to ask is when we're doing these consent items, so we're changing things up a little bit. I wanted to make sure that everybody had had a chance to review the items. Because we're not, unless you want to pull it out, we're not going to have the presentation this time around. So maybe if there were any questions about these particular items since it's the first time, go ahead and ask them. Or call it out and say, well, I really want to talk about that one, but just a reminder that we're doing the consent items, which will speed up our system and make us a little more productive. If anybody has anything, please let me know ahead of time or ask for it. So.
Yeah, so with the consent items, what we'll do is, I forgot, is Haysom online?
He's not online yet.
Okay, so when we start the meeting, just go ahead and say that where we are and the time and date and what members are present.
He just joined.
Oh, so
For the main meeting or this meeting?
for this meeting
Okay.
and the main meeting. And
Okay.
so if you go ahead and do that, then let's talk about the consent agenda that we have coming up
Okay,
for tonight.
all right. So for this session of the Planning Commission, we have myself, Mike Carpenter, we have Jerry Crispin, Jim Hawks, Rod Erickson, and on Zoom we have Haysom Sakar. And we are in the Orem City Council chambers.
Yep. And so this is the work meeting. And what we have no specific agenda items on this meeting. And so what the intent of this meeting is to, one, talk a little bit about tonight's meeting. We've talked before about having a consent, having trouble talking, sorry, consent agenda. And so those administrative items that come to you will be on it. So this will be the first time we have it, and it'll take us, a few times to get into a rhythm with this. And so these items, what we've done are the consent or the administrative items that come from the design review committee, and we send it to you. If they comply with code, we have to approve it. If it doesn't comply with code, we can't approve it. And so to save time, we're putting it on a consent agenda. And if you feel I'm telling you things that, hey, you've already told us this, and I'm not only just talking to you, but to the public in general, if they may be watching and wondering what we're doing. And so those items will go on a consent agenda. So at the beginning of when we leave the work meeting and we go into the regular agenda meeting for the Planning Commission, where you will make decisions on projects that come in front of you. When we get to the consent agenda item, the chair, and in this case, Mike is the vice chair, and our Madeline, who is the chair, is not here, so Mike runs the meeting. Mike will go, okay, we have the consent agenda. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion to take an item off the consent agenda? So hopefully in the materials you've gotten, you've had a chance to see those administrative items. And if for some reason you have a question about whether we really can approve this or not, then it would be appropriate to take it off the agenda in the agenda meeting. Does that make sense? If it's just kind of oh gosh, I had an interesting question about this, that's not really related to whether we can approve it or not. That's something that you could ask in the work meeting. Oh, this project is, I see that. I heard that such and such a type of business was going to go in there, and that's why they're doing that. Well, that really wouldn't bear on whether it should be approved or not. But that might be something interesting that you would like to know. Then once we're in the meeting, assuming nobody wanted to take something off the agenda, the consent agenda, Mike would then, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? And then one of you would, I move that we approve the items on the consent agenda. And Mike, I forgot this part. When we get to the consent agenda, you will read into the record each item.
That's a question I had is, so the approval of the consent agenda items are to be done separately.
No, they're done all together.
Okay, collectively.
But
So
we
I
will-
would just read each item off, say, and then take the vote.
Yes, so if I were, say, chair tonight, I would come, it's like, okay, we're now to the consent agenda item. We have 2 items on tonight. Number 1 is, and then I would read quickly the title. And then number 2 is a preliminary plat approval for, I would do that. Does anybody have a motion to take an item off the consent agenda? Assuming nobody does, and that would, frankly, should be a rare circumstance that we would take one off.
Yeah.
Then assuming nobody does, Mike would then say, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? And then someone would approve it, make that motion. Someone would second that motion to approve, and then you would vote and move on. And that will save us time from opening it up and all that. And because often you have applicants who will come in. And in the past, we've said, oh, is the applicant here? Do you want to come forward and talk? And on the inside, I'm going, okay, well, you're starting with a win.
Yeah.
The only thing you can do
Is messing up.
is mess it up. You can't get a double win. So, and this is the intent is to still be transparent, still make sure the public's work is done in public, but be as efficient with things as we can be when our hands are really tied to approve a project if it complies with code.
Right.
And they are the consent agenda portion with these administrative items. Again, these are items that could be very important to the public, but they are public hearing items, not necessarily public meeting items, but not public hearing items.
Yeah.
So people, hey, I came down and you're not even going to listen to me, or I said, don't approve this project and you did anyway. That can create difficulties because it gives an expectation that you can do something other than approve it.
Yeah. Okay.
So any questions on this? And this will be new, but within a meeting or two, we'll be able to just breeze through that.
So we read items, we ask for if anybody wants to remove an item, and then we motion to approve it.
Yes.
Now, if somebody wants to remove an item, where does that go in the agenda?
Well,
Will
what
we
you would
do
do
at that point or right after?
you would deal with it right after. Let's say you had three consent agenda items, and first you would have to make a motion. I want to remove it. There'd be a second. You'd
Okay,
have to vote to
so we're
remove it.
making the motion to take things off.
Yeah,
the
you're
item.
voting to take it off.
Okay,
And then we would just, I move that we take consent agenda item number 1 and put it on the action agenda. And I second that. And then you vote and you do it. Now we'll listen to it when we get to the action items.
So is it clearly delineated what are consent items and what are not? In other words, so who put this agenda together then?
We do
Okay,
in development services.
all right.
And we do that in consultation with the chair and vice chair. Not quite, we're still working through that
Okay.
process of.
So that there wouldn't be any dispute necessarily regarding if an item is a consent agenda or not a consent agenda.
Well, you remember, we've had a conversation with Planning Commission
Right,
about what types of items should be on our consent agenda. And so again, we may come in and want to have a discussion of, no, these types of things, we want to hear them. Even though they're administrative and we have to approve them
yeah,
if they comply with code, they're the type of ones that we want to approve. Now, there will be ones that come in front of you that you're like, no, because this is a condo plat and you have unit 1 and unit 2, and they're changing the square footage. The owner of unit 2 is going to sell to the owner of unit 1 a little more square footage. So unit 1 can be a little bigger office, and they do that in their condos. They would come in and do an amended condominium plat that would come to you. If you ever want to hear those, come talk to me before you decide that, and I will dissuade you of why nobody wants to hear those. And we would just be wasting time that we could otherwise do. Because you need to remember, all of these agenda items that you see in front of you go to the city's development review committee. And the code says we can't pass them on to you until they comply with code. Now, you will see on the action agenda tonight, we had one. We were going to DRC. They were supposed to give us elevations as a part of the package. we did the DRC, okay, where are your elevations? Because we're just requiring, they didn't get them to us. And so we we have to continue that one because we need those.
Yeah.
And it's a technical thing, but it's an important thing.
Oh, yeah. Below elevation if you don't get the right stuff, right?
Yeah, because we need to make sure that complies with code. It's usually a routine thing, and there was, I think, a miscommunication, and it just didn't get into us when we thought it was going to be. And so, and that happens occasionally, but fairly rarely.
Okay, so we're just really holding a vote to push it off.
Yeah, and so what you have is staff, we're requesting that you continue this because we're going to tell you you can't approve it tonight because we don't have all the legally required documents that we need to be able to approve it.
Well, I mean, this is an extreme example, but suppose we said, no, we're not going to approve the continuance of that. Would that make any difference? I can't see that it would.
Well, if you didn't continue it, then it would be, okay, so if you're not going to continue it,
Yeah.
then you have to make a decision, approve it
Okay.
or deny it. If you approve it, somebody could appeal and say, hold it, they made an approval that didn't follow code because you're supposed to have this and you didn't.
I see.
And we would lose. If you,
Doesn't that make the city a little liable over the elevation if there's a problem?
yeah, it could. I would suggest we not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other alternative would be to deny it and say, no, we deny this project. You didn't turn in your elevations like you should have. And then they could appeal and say, hey, Board of Adjustment, we'll get those. Do we really have to start all over again and pay all new fees? And then the Board of Adjustment could say, no, you don't have to do that. Go back to Planning Commission with your appropriate elevations. And if we get the appropriate elevations and they comply, we would put them on a consent agenda. So that's why they're not on the consent agenda. So this is a good one to start with because it got a little goofy and went sideways. But hopefully, again, the intent is to make the best use that we can of the Planning Commission's limited, valuable time to have you in meetings and to discuss things. And so in work meetings, we've been talking about priorities that you have, things that we could work on, bylaws. You see the bylaws on tonight. What we wanted to do in consultation with the chairs, we talked about bylaws. You're looking at them tonight. I could answer questions about the bylaws for you if you had them. And then at the next meeting, when the chair's back at our work meeting, we would discuss the bylaws in more detail. And then assuming you feel comfortable with the bylaws, then you would approve them and then we would move forward operating under those bylaws. The other thing to talk about tonight is a continuation of Planning Commission priorities. Not that we would necessarily make a final decision, but one of the items in the bylaws was to set up subcommittees where we talked about how many things we have in the city going on that are important. We've talked about those lighting issues that came up. It's lighting admittedly is not a huge issue in the city right now today, but as we go on and go into the future, it could become a bigger issue. So it's probably something that we should think about proactively rather than react. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. We've also talked about food trucks. We've talked about, okay, food trucks, there's this 4 or 5 hour limitation that we've talked about. Should we just deal with that or should we deal with food trucks more comprehensively. And that's a big issue. It will be in the future dealing with a general plan. You know, that could be a big issue. That would take a lot of time to look at. So you've got all of these large issues, a committee of the whole of the Planning Commission. It would be hard to get a lot of things done if every single one of these we had to have, you know, 6, 7 hours worth of discussion and meeting looking at ordinances and alternatives before you could make a recommendation to the city council. And so by having your committees, 1 or 2 of you could, yeah, we want to meet with staff and really dig into this one issue. We think this is important, and you'll rank the priorities that you have, and you'll think that some of these are important. So you'll meet with staff. We can work with you on planning commission meeting days and at times that you can make it. And then you could come back to the planning commission from that subcommittee. Let's say you 3 here wanted to do that. You could come back and make a report to planning commission, make a recommendation. The planning commission where you should go on that and have that discussion. And then ultimately you would make those recommendations that go to the municipal council. So we can have those committees set up to deal with substantive issues that we have, procedural issues, our notices, are they right? Are we, you know, how do we go about those things? That's kind of a big deal to dive into, and takes more time and effort to think about it and get it right than people often imagine it would.
Yeah.
And I've talked nonstop for quite a while now, and I'm sick of hearing me talk. So I thought I'd just throw that out too.
Why don't you sing now for a minute?
And then I would be quickly voted off.
Off the island.
I'd be voted off the island.
This man, a top hat and a cane.
I do look a little like Mr. Peanut, I've been told, so that might work. Get me a monocle and we'll go from there.
I would laugh uproariously. You now know your Halloween costume.
Well, last year I did go as Megamind.
Oh,
If you've ever
nice.
seen that my
Yeah.
kids love that cartoon. So, oh,
Sorry.
yeah, speaking to the
Let me get
microphone.
in
so-
Mic range. Just as a heads up, for this planning commission, I still have the minutes in review of like approval still as their own item. We just kind of wanted to test out how we feel about the consent items first. And if that goes smoothly and we like that, then we're just gonna pop those minutes in as a part of that for the next one.
That sounds good.
And that could, on the consent agenda, that would be the same thing. So when you get the minutes, if you look at the minutes and you think, that's not quite right, we need to change that, then you would take the minutes off the consent agenda and deal with it separately.
Okay. Do you have any questions? Do you have any questions? Haysom, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
So I don't have any questions. I don't have any questions related to what we just talked about. I do have a request. We were talking a little bit before the meeting started. You know, sometimes we get the notifications sometimes we get the notifications for town meetings, neighborhood meetings, et cetera, in the mail. But I've experienced, whether it's the post office or whatever reason, where I don't get it until after the fact. And so
Till after the meeting.
right.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if there's some way that when these go out through the postal service, if they're, they could be emailed out to us simultaneously or sent via text. I'm wondering if that's a request we could make to make sure that, I don't know if anyone else has the same problem, but it would help to be aware of and make plans to attend these neighborhood meetings.
Yeah, that's an issue that's come up before that we've talked about, that the mailers go out. That's one of those procedural items that may need some code changes. And part of the solution may be a code change to require, if you have a neighborhood meeting, the mailer for the neighborhood meeting needs to go out earlier. And that may do it, and there's that balancing. We don't want it too early. The earlier you do it, the more likely it is everybody will get it. Yet the earlier you do it, you may schedule for it more, but you also may forget about it too. And so in emails, that might be something that we could do.
I think you're just asking for that in addition to the mailers.
Yes.
Yeah, you still want the mailers,
Correct.
but just to make certain that you receive that notification.
In a timely manner.
I got my mailers for the day, yesterday and today.
For the mailers for,
For the things on our agenda today, I got
Oh.
2 of them yesterday, 1 of them today. Which, if I already hadn't had plans, it would be really short notice.
And I got
yeah,
mine-
that
I got
would be
mine,
short
I
notice.
got mine a couple of days ago, so I had mine
Yeah.
well in advance. So, and I think your point about too far in advance, it gets lost in the home.
How about if we do this on that item? Let's take a note of this item, and at our next work meeting, we'll come back with and talk to you about the process of how that works and some ideas of what we could do to take care of it. And then the noticing, if we can take that mailer and turn it into an email in some fashion. And we'll tell you the whole process, who mails it, how do they do it, what the code requires, so that we can try and figure that out. Because to get a mailer today, well, I want to tell you, I've never gotten a mailer. I just want you to know that. But then again, I don't live in Orem, so that's a little different. But no, actually, I do get mailers. I'm on the mailer list, so I do get them.
We have discussed this before, and before you were part of the group. And do you remember discussing
Yeah.
this mailer issue before? And it was
Couple
defined to us, yeah. So I've not had issues, but I know others have expressed concern that they've.
Yeah, and we've heard this before. This isn't the first time. So let us come back and we'll put it on as an agenda item at the next Planning Commission work meeting and talk about that exact issue and see if we can fairly quickly get that
It
resolved.
should be pretty easy. I mean, we put the mailers in the PDF for the agenda stuff, so we should just have to attach it to an email and send it out.
Yeah, and so we'll talk internally about it. And I don't
Sounds
know,
good.
Matt, do you have any ideas on that that'll solve this immediately or?
Noticing
Yeah,
the mail. Back to my line to get it out earlier.
So yeah, I don't want us to spend a lot of resources making this happen, but if there's just some things we can do to make it, more timely.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
and I
and-
said if I'm not getting them, then neighbors aren't getting them either.
well,
Some of them
and
are
that's
getting
right.
late,
And,
so.
and that's an important issue, especially if we're talking about a legislative item and there's a rezone coming up and people want to know about it, would like to be involved. That's not going to feel very good that you get the notification the day after.
Well, we've had citizen complaint regarding meetings that were held that they claim they were not apprised of. We've all heard that. And now did they or did they not? I don't know how you would, did it get lost in the mail? I don't know.
Gary, one thing I could suggest is work with Pete Wolfley on a email communication strategy or campaign to get people to sign up for the state public notice website. So if you are interested in keeping tabs, you can register your email with the state anytime we post an agenda. And you can even make it for certain types of meetings. So you don't have to get a notice for every meeting the city holds because we have lots of committees. But you can register for planning commission agendas, and those will show up almost instantly after we post the agenda. So that doesn't solve the mail issue, and it doesn't solve getting the attention of people that don't typically pay attention. But those that would like an email notification right away, we could try and encourage people to sign up for that. That may help a little bit.
So,
That wouldn't fix the neighborhood meetings though, right?
no, so yeah, so I think the concern is the neighborhood meetings because the developer or the planner or whatever is, they're the ones that mail those out. They get the list
Yeah.
from the city. But I'm assuming they would give you a copy of what they're sending the citizens, I'm assuming. And then that could be sent to the planning commission and the city council, because we like to go, because I called you Friday because I got the mailer and it was 750 north, 100 west. And I wigged out because Lene and I were at the 690, whatever, 100 west. And there were two different things. And I was saying, this has to come to the city council, and it was a totally different project. So, I just think that if they can get the information sooner, then they have time to be able to go out and look at the project instead of now we're in city council and you're going, heck, I mean, I've had that problem for 11 years. So.
And you're right, we need to get that resolved. We need to make it so that people have adequate notice that they can get out. And we just want to balance things and make sure people that want to be involved and informed get the information they need in the time frame that they need it.
So Gary, can you like have a procedure, maybe change something in the code, or how, if they're doing an application, they have to have a neighborhood meeting, but it has to be sent out a month prior or whatever it is, or 3 weeks, and also emailed to the planning commission and the city council. Put that in the.
Yeah, and so what we'll do at the next meeting is we'll come back and show you what the code says and kind of the process. Okay, a developer makes an application or comes in, you got to have a neighborhood meeting. How does that work? What does it look like? What do they do? And then, and what the code says they need to do, because we want to make sure they're doing what the code says. And then we'll see, clearly something's not quite right, so we need to fix it. And it might be a code change, and we'll make a recommendation of how to do that to you, or some ideas, and then we can talk about it and come up with a solution. And if it requires a code change, then we can work on making that code change and getting that sent to planning commission and council, and we'll start doing that so that people are informed.
What's the verification process look like for ensuring that those notices are not being sent out delayed on purpose? Right, they can't have objections if, they sent out the notices, but residents don't get them in time on purpose.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know. And that's why I want to dig into it comprehensively and come back. But those notices do get mailed out by the developer. Now they'll come to us, and we have an ability to go in and take that data from the county, where the notice goes not necessarily to the property, but to where the property owner wants the tax notice to go. So we'll go through all of that, and we could even show you how that would work. Oh, okay, if this is going to happen, this is the process. And so, it's a process that we've been doing for so long, we may not be able to see the forest through the trees anymore. And it's good to just review it, walk you through it as if it's brand new, so that we can make adjustments that need to be made.
Yeah, and just I want to emphasize and underscore Mike's point. In our world of technology, whether it's required of the developer or wherever in the process, this should be easy peasy. It should be, you can send PDFs in all sorts of formats very quickly, more cost effectively than mailing. And I'm imagining some developers mail them because they say they have some kind of proof. But so I don't think we're asking to build a rocket, but use the technology that's available, or cause the developers to use the technology that's available to help us all. Do you have something?
Yeah, I pulled up the code. It says the written notice shall be provided at least 1 week prior to the neighborhood meeting. So that's what the current code requires. And then it has this, huh? Well, I'm just saying like, that's what the code specifies, at least 1 week. If we've told developers 10 days, great, but they may still go back to the code and say, well, it says at least 1 week. Right, so that's something we can bring back next week and next time, like to Gary's point, and we can show you the rest of the requirements.
Okay, thank you.
And we want to look at not just that, but we want to look at, is it actually happening?
Yeah.
And to see those types of things. So if you've got a notice for something that was happening at a certain time and it came late, it would be good to see when the postmark on it was.
Okay, I'll make sure to track that in the future. I would note that perhaps some of the developers are interpreting it to be mail it out 1 week in advance. And that could account for, showing up a day or two before or even after the fact, if that's the way they're interpreting it.
And assuming the code says 1 week, I think, as Becca said, I think routinely we tell them 10 days. Do it 10 days, and that's just what staff is telling them. And assuming that they're doing it that way, it's not working, right? And that's the issue.
So it does look like we have something to discuss and for the next meeting. So
Yeah.
if you bring us a proposal, I think that would be great.
Okay.
Just so you know, Hasem had something come up and he has to leave. So
Okay.
he just sent a message, so.
Permanently or just for the moment?
Mike, I'm sorry, something came up. I can't attend the next half.
Well, that's fine. Hopefully everything's all right. So,
Thank you, Mike. I'll speak to you later. Thank you.
see ya. Right, yeah. So we call an adjournment or between the two, or do we have more to discuss? Or I don't know. Madeline usually does it and I just nod.
So what we can do is, once we have the work meeting and we're done, so the work meeting started at 4:30. The action or agenda meeting is going to start at 5:30. So since we're doing it in here, you've got several options. One is just if you're done, like if we're done and we know we've got a big agenda, you can just adjourn that meeting, and then you'll reconvene right here at 5:30. If we've got a lot of things going on, since we're here, you can just keep going, adjourn right at 5:30 or 5:29, and just move right into the planning commission meeting. And sometimes if it's a very light agenda, or we might not even have a meeting, we can just stay here and keep working and not have to interrupt. So as chair, you could adjourn this meeting right now, and next week we'll have on next meeting, we'll have bylaws and we'll talk about this noticing issue and come back with a recommendation on that. So at this point, you can, whatever the planning commission would like to do, talk about a few more things, priorities or procedural things that you would like staff to look into and come back with, or you can just adjourn this meeting and then you'll come back in 15 minutes and reconvene for the agenda meeting of the planning commission.
Okay. Does anybody have anything they'd like to discuss or?
Just that the next planning commission is November 6th.
So. All right, well then let's adjourn the meeting until the regular session at 5:30.
Okay.
And you can't start the next meeting early. It has to start at the time that's appointed.
It has to start at the
Yeah.
notice time.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't take votes for the visitor.
Oh, no, we don't need to.
I mean-
Making sure. I don't,
Okay, I'm hearing it on here. I'm hearing it on this earpiece. So I don't know if you want to. Testing, testing. You're not hearing it? Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Hello. You have to touch your.
Jerry.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear me. Okay.
And individually, and so now they can come in.
But then I'll take that back. It's late.
Oh,
That's slow for my phone, so.
yeah, it's too private.
Tell me when we're ready. Okay. All right, I'd like to call the regular session of the Orem City Planning Commission to order. We have Britton Runnelson, Jerry Crispin, Mike Carpenter, Jim Hawks, and Rod Erickson present today in the city council chambers. So that's the call to order, right? I forgot to ask, but would somebody like to give the invocation? Britton?
Most gracious Father in heaven, I come before thee in humble prayer this afternoon to thank you for the opportunity that we have to come together to discuss the needs of the beautiful city of Orem that we live in, that we reside in. We ask that thou please guide this meeting, that we be productive and to be able to do what we feel is best for the residents of Orem and to do things that are responsible, sound, and of wisdom. These things we ask in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay, let's see. We have on our consent items, we have two items. Item 3.1, site plan Tractor Supply Company, approving the site plan of Tractor Supply Company located generally at 125 South State Street in the C3 zone. We have item 3.2, plat amendment, the Cove Estates Phase 2 Plat B, approving the plat amendment of Cove Estates Phase 2 Plat B located generally at 978 North, 1560 East in the R12 zone. Is there anyone who'd like to take anything off the consent agenda? Seeing as nobody would like to remove anything, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent items on the agenda.
I second that.
Okay, Rod makes the motion and Jim seconds. Can I get a vote?
Aye.
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 Okay, consent items pass. Let's see. Then move into the action items now. We have one item on our action item. 5.1, it's a continuance of site plan, approving the site plan of Shelley Lane, PRD located generally at 750 North, 100 West in the R6 zone. Do we open up for discussion or?
You can, you don't need to open it up for a public hearing. It's not a public hearing. But you can open it up for discussion or questions for staff or someone
Okay.
from the public.
All right. Does anybody have any questions or?
Well, we've already discussed the reason for this request in that some information is needed by the city to proceed. Therefore, I move that we approve this continuance request for the site plan of Shelley Lane, PRD located generally at 750 North, 100 West in the R6 zone.
I second it.
Okay. A vote?
Aye.
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 Okay, item passes. Our final item up for review is the minutes. Item 6.1, the minutes for the 9/18/24 Planning Commission.
Yeah, I'll motion to review and approve the minutes from the September 19th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting.
I second it.
Aye.
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 All right.
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, that's the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Just once, I'd like you to say no.
No.
we're staying.
No.
No.
Who seconded that?